Friends, thank you for being here today. What if I told you that the true center of gravity for the 21st century is not shifting toward the crowded markets of Asia or the political theaters of Europe, but is effectively consolidating right here under our feet? And ask yourself this. In a world rapidly running out of space, fresh water, and stability, is it possible that the quiet neighbor of the North is actually the indispensable fortress upon which the future of the Western world relies? For decades, the narrative surrounding our nation has been one of polite modesty. We are often viewed by the international community, and indeed sometimes by ourselves, as the friendly attic of North America, vast, cold, and largely empty. We are the land of maple syrup, hockey, and apologizing. But this perception is not just simplistic, it is a strategic camouflage that hides a profound geopolitical reality. Canada is not merely a large country. It is a geographic colossus that holds a monopoly on the very resources and trade routes that will define the next 100 years of human history. To understand Canada's true place in the world, we must strip away the tourist brochures and look at the hard map. We must look at the rock, the water, and the ice. When we do, we see that geography is not just scenery, it is destiny. And Canada's destiny is to be the silent superpower of the modern age. Let's begin by addressing the sheer incomprehensible scale of this land, often mistaken for empty space. The first thing we must address is the sheer incomprehensible scale of this land. We are the second largest country on Earth, covering nearly 10 million square kilometers. To put that into a perspective that our European friends might understand, you could fit the entire European Union into Canada and still have enough room left over to lose a few countries. Yet, we are inhabited by a population roughly the size of California's. Critics and economists often point to our population density, approximately 4 people per square kilometer, as a weakness. They argue we are too spread out to be efficient, too small in number to be powerful. This is a fundamental misunderstanding of strategic geography. In the context of the 21st century, low population density combined with massive resource abundance is not a weakness. It is the ultimate luxury. While the rest of the world faces overcrowding, housing crises driven by land scarcity and the depletion of local resources, Canada possesses a strategic reserve of space. However, this space is not uniform. We know that 75% of us live within 100 miles of the U.S. border, huddled in the temperate south. This leaves the vast majority of our territory, the Shield, the tundra, the boreal forest, as an immense uninhabited buffer zone. This creates a unique defensive reality. An invasion or occupation of the Canadian heartland is logistically impossible for any foreign power. The sheer distance, the rugged terrain of the Canadian Shield, and the climate act as a natural fortress. We are protected not just by our military alliances, but by the land itself. But this emptiness is deceptive. It is not empty. It is full of what the world needs most. Beyond our landmass, we possess a maritime dominance that no other country can claim. We are the fortress of 3 oceans. Canada is the only nation on Earth that truly spans 3 oceans: the Atlantic, the Pacific, and the Arctic. This is not just a slogan. It is a maritime dominance that no other country can claim. We possess the longest coastline in the world, stretching over 202,000 kilometers. To understand the magnitude of this, compare it to Indonesia, an archipelago nation famous for its islands. Indonesia has the second longest coastline, yet ours is nearly 4 times longer. This coastline grants us an exclusive economic zone, EE, of unparalleled value. In the east, the Atlantic fisheries, despite their troubled history, remain a vital source of protein in a hungry world. In the west, our access to the Pacific ties us to the Asian economies without succumbing to their geopolitical orbit. But it is the third ocean, the Arctic, that changes everything. For most of history, the Arctic Ocean was a frozen wall, a dead end. Today, it is becoming a highway. We will discuss the specific politics of the Arctic later, but geographically, Canada's northern coast is the Mediterranean of the future. As ice recedes, the internal waters of the Arctic archipelago, our waters, are becoming the most strategic maritime choke point since the Suez Canal was dug in Egypt. Furthermore, our islands are not merely rocks in the ocean. We have over 52,000 named islands. The Arctic archipelago alone contains 36,000 of them. Baffin Island is the 5th largest in the world, and Ellesmere Island is the 10th. These are land masses larger than Great Britain, sitting silently as sentinels of the North. Unlike the islands of the South China Sea, which are small, contested, and artificially built up by powers like China to project force, our islands are massive natural aircraft carriers. They provide us with the ability to project sovereignty and surveillance over the entire roof of the world, should we choose to invest in doing so. If geography is the stage, resources are the script. And in this regard, Canada has been dealt a winning hand of water and energy. Let us begin with the resource that will likely cause the conflicts of the future: freshwater. We are home to more lakes than every other country in the world combined, over 2 million lakes. We hold 20% of the world's surface freshwater supply. In a world where aquifers are draining in the American Midwest, where droughts are ravaging the Mediterranean and Africa, and where water rationing is becoming common in Asia, Canada sits on the Saudi Arabia of water. This is not just about drinking water, it is about hydroelectric power. Our geography allows us to generate massive amounts of clean, renewable energy. We act as a battery for the North American continent. The American Northeast relies heavily on Quebec's hydro, while the Pacific Northwest relies on British Columbia's. This energy interdependence gives us leverage. When we negotiate trade deals or navigate diplomatic spats with Washington, we must remember that we keep their lights on. Then there is the matter of oil. It is fashionable in some circles to dismiss our energy sector or to view it solely through an environmental lens. However, from a geopolitical standpoint, the Alberta oil sands are a strategic asset of the highest order. Canada holds the third largest proven oil reserves in the world, trailing only Venezuela and Saudi Arabia. But look at the stability of those two competitors. Venezuela is in economic collapse, and the Middle East is perpetually volatile. Canada offers something the world craves: energy security and a stable democracy. We are the largest foreign supplier of energy to the United States. Many Americans, and indeed many Canadians, do not realize that the U.S. imports more oil from Canada than from all OPEC countries combined. This relationship is often portrayed as Canadian dependence on the American market, and economically that is true. But strategically, it is mutual dependence. The American military-industrial complex, their transport grid, and their heating systems run on Canadian crude. In an era of global instability, Canada is the guarantor of North American energy independence, and beneath the trees and the lakes lies the Canadian Shield, which is nothing less than a geological bank vault. Beneath the trees and the lakes lies the Canadian Shield, a massive formation of exposed Precambrian igneous and high-grade metamorphic rock. It is among the oldest rock on Earth, dating back nearly 4 billion years. For early settlers, the Shield was a barrier, difficult to farm and difficult to cross. Today, it is a bank vault. The Shield is one of the world's richest sources of minerals. We have been mining gold, nickel, and copper for over a century. But the conversation has shifted. The modern economy does not just run on steel and oil. It runs on lithium, cobalt, graphite, and rare earth elements. These are the ingredients of batteries, of microchips, of the digital age. Currently, China dominates the supply chain for these critical minerals. The Western world is desperately seeking to decouple from Chinese supply chains to ensure national security. Who has the alternative supply? We do. The geology of the Canadian Shield positions us to be the primary supplier of critical minerals to the NATO alliance and the Western economy. We have the resources to break the monopoly of our adversaries, provided we have the will to extract and process them. Yet, the strategic power of this land is not limited to what lies deep underground. It extends to the very soil that feeds us and the forests that breathe for the world. If the Canadian Shield represents the backbone of the digital age, then our prairies and forests represent the lifeblood of a hungry and warming planet. We often speak of national security in terms of missiles and borders, but the most fundamental security of all is food security. In this arena, Canada is a titan. Consider the reality of global demographics. As the world population surges past 8 billion, the demand for food is skyrocketing at the exact moment that arable land elsewhere is degrading due to desertification and urbanization. Canada, however, sits on some of the most fertile and resilient agricultural land on the planet. We are the world's largest producer of canola, a top exporter of wheat, and a leading supplier of pulses. But our leverage goes deeper than just grain. Hidden beneath the plains of Saskatchewan lies a resource that is arguably as critical to global stability as oil: potash. This pink gold is the essential ingredient in fertilizer that allows modern agriculture to exist. Without it, crop yields globally would plummet, leading to famine and unrest. Canada controls nearly half of the world's known potash reserves. This is a staggering monopoly. When geopolitical tensions rise in Eastern Europe, another major potash producer, the world turns anxiously to Canada to keep its crops growing. We do not just feed the world, we provide the means for the world to feed itself. This gives Ottawa a silent but powerful lever in international trade negotiations, one that we have historically been too polite to fully utilize. Furthermore, we must look at the green crown of our nation, the boreal forest spanning from Newfoundland to the Yukon. This is one of the largest intact forest ecosystems left on Earth. It is not just a collection of trees, it is a massive carbon bank. The boreal forest stores twice as much carbon per acre as tropical rainforests. In an era where carbon emissions are the currency of international diplomacy, this forest provides a service to the entire planet, regulating the global thermostat and filtering the air. For too long, we have treated this as a passive backdrop. But in a future defined by climate accords and carbon credits, our stewardship of the boreal forest is a tangible asset. We provide an ecological service that stabilizes the climate for the United States, Europe, and Asia. This is biological sovereignty. Just as we assert control over our oil and our minerals, we must recognize that maintaining the lungs of the Northern Hemisphere is a contribution that warrants political and economic capital. We are not just a resource extraction economy, we are an environmental superpower. This agricultural and ecological dominance complements our mineral wealth. While the world digs for the components of the next iPhone in the shield, they look to the prairies for their next meal and to the boreal for their clean air. It is a complete ecosystem of strategic necessity, all contained within one set of borders. Now we must turn our eyes to the north, for the Arctic shift means the center of the world is moving in our direction. Now we must turn our eyes to the north, for this is where the history of the 21st century is being written. Climate change is reshaping our geography in real time. The Arctic is warming faster than anywhere else on Earth. Since 1979, we have seen a reduction in sea ice of over 2.6 million kilometers. While we must address the environmental gravity of this, we must also be clear-eyed about the geopolitical reality. The ice is melting. The sharks are circling. Russia has known this for years. They have aggressively remilitarized their Arctic coast, reopening Soviet-era bases, testing hypersonic missiles in the Barents Sea, and building a fleet of nuclear-powered icebreakers that dwarfs the combined fleets of the West. They view the Northern Sea Road along their coast as their personal toll road for shipping between Asia and Europe. China, despite being 1/4,100 kilometers away from the Arctic Circle, has declared itself a near-Arctic state. This is a fabricated term with no basis in international law, yet they use it to justify their presence. They are building icebreakers. They are investing in mining projects in Greenland. They envision a polar silk road where Chinese goods flow over the top of the world to Europe and North America, bypassing the vulnerable Strait of Malacca. And then there's the Northwest Passage. This is the holy grail of maritime navigation, a route through Canada's Arctic archipelago that cuts thousands of kilometers off the journey between Europe and Asia. For centuries, explorers died trying to find it. Now it is opening up. This presents the single greatest challenge to Canadian sovereignty in our lifetime. The United States, our closest ally, disputes our claim that the Northwest Passage is internal waters. Washington argues it is an international strait, meaning foreign navies and commercial fleets should have free passage without Canadian permission. We must be very clear. If the Northwest Passage is international waters, Canada loses control over who enters our backyard. We lose the ability to regulate environmental standards for oil tankers passing through pristine Inuit waters. We lose the ability to block hostile naval vessels. I want to stop here for a moment because this point is crucial. The dispute over our northern waters often divides opinion. Do you believe Canada should take a harder stance on Arctic sovereignty, even with our allies, or is compromise inevitable? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. This is why the government's investment in Arctic offshore patrol ships and the modernization of NORAD is not just military spending. It is an assertion of ownership. The resolution of the Whiskey War with Denmark over Hans Island, splitting the island in two and creating a land border with Europe, was a masterclass in diplomacy. It showed that the Arctic can be managed through law and negotiation. But with Russia and China, law is often secondary to power. This geography does more than provide resources. It shapes the human element, forging a unique resilience and sovereignty. Geography shapes character, the harshness of the Canadian landscape. The winters that can kill and the distances that isolate have forged a population that is resilient, practical, and community-oriented. We see this in the north. The Inuit have inhabited the Arctic for thousands of years. Their presence is the foundation of our sovereignty. International law often recognizes effective occupation as a basis for ownership. The communities in Nunavut, the Northwest Territories, and the Yukon are not just citizens. They are the living flag of Canada on the ice. Supporting these communities with infrastructure, healthcare, and economic opportunity is not just social policy, it is national security policy. We also see this resilience in our approach to global affairs. We are a middle power, yes, but a middle power with the assets of a superpower. We have traditionally preferred multilateralism, peacekeeping, and trade agreements. We value our autonomy. This brings us to the sensitive topic of our relationship with the United States. We're friends, neighbors, and allies, but we are not the same. The Canadian worldview, specifically the worldview of your generation, the generation that built the modern social safety net and fought for the repatriated Constitution, values the collective good and national sovereignty. We watch the polarization and instability in the U.S. with concern. A U.S.-centric policy is no longer a guarantee of stability. As Washington turns inward, becoming more protectionist and unpredictable, Canada's geographic independence becomes our lifeboat. We cannot simply be a branch plant economy. We must diversify our trade, using our Atlantic and Pacific coasts to reach Europe and Asia directly, bypassing the American middleman where possible. We must refine our own resources rather than shipping raw bitumen south and buying back gasoline. If you are finding this analysis of Canada's true potential valuable, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. It helps us continue to bring you in-depth perspectives on the issues that matter most. Friends, when we combine all these factors, we see the emergence of a silent superpower. A picture emerges that is vastly different from the modest stereotype we are used to. We possess the world's longest coastline, controlling the approaches to the continent. We hold the world's largest freshwater reserves in an era of thirst. We sit on a mountain of critical minerals necessary for the digital future. We are the energy guarantor for the United States, and we own the keys to the Northwest Passage, the most strategic maritime route of the coming century. We are a superpower in waiting. We are a superpower not of aircraft carriers and nuclear proliferation, but of geography and resources. We are the silent giant of the North. But potential is not power. Potential must be realized. The challenge for us and for the leaders who follow us is to stop apologizing for our size and start leveraging it. We must stop viewing the Arctic as a frozen wasteland and start treating it as our front door. We must stop selling our resources at a discount and start using them to demand a seat at the table. The world is changing. The center of gravity is moving north. History is coming to our shores, whether we invite it or not. The only question is, will we be ready to act as the landlords of our own destiny, or will we let others carve up the map? I believe the answer lies in the character of this country. We are the watchers of the North. We are the keepers of the shield. And it is time we recognize that Canada does not just occupy space on the map. Canada owns the geography that will define the future. Thank you.